Hello everyone, it is your boy Winster, and I am back at it again with another video. Today we are talking about hand traps, when to use them, how to use them, and which ones are the best ones to use in today's format being April of 2023. But before we get into today's discussion video, guys, do yourselves a favor. If you guys love my content or just enjoy watching it, a casual Winster fan, be sure to hit that subscribe button and also turn on the notifications. It does help me, it does help the channel grow, and we're getting ever so close to 1,000 subs. Also, if you guys want to check out any of my other content, I have a Twitter, TikTok, and I also have a very active Discord. Be sure to check those out. I'm going to leave everything in the description box below, so be sure to check those out if you guys are interested. But let's go ahead and get into today's video. I'm really excited to talk about them. This is something that I've been wanting to do for quite some time. But let's jump into it. So here is our tier list. I'm going to go ahead and break down every single tier and what exactly it means. But before we jump into it, guys, please remember these are my own thoughts and opinions. I am not right nor wrong. These are just my recommendations that I want to give anyone looking for any kind of guidance on what they should or should not be playing. Starting us off, D tier, cards that are not good in the format, cards that I do not recommend. C tier, these are experimental sideboard cards that you could potentially run in the side deck. B tier, hand traps that you should be running in the side deck considering today's format. A tier, cards that you could potentially run in the main. And S tier, hand traps that you must be running in the main if you want to be playing in today's format. Start off with Chaos Hunter. Chaos Hunter reads, when your opponent special summons a monster, except during the damage step, you could discard one card, and that would be as cost. Special summon this card from your hand. Your opponent cannot banish cards. So this is really only good in one matchup, and you guys know the matchup. This is a good against Kashtira. So you're gonna want to see this card going second in your opening hand. You definitely wouldn't want to draw this for turn, but it does happen. That's the classic. But if you do manage to draw this opening hand, I would definitely think it would stop the Kashtira matchup, but that's pretty much it. It's not even good in a defensive manner, such as against Evenly Match if your opponent were to drop Evenly Match on you. Where other cards can stop Evenly Match, this won't, because it just makes you banish, and the only one that's prevented from banishing is your opponent. So I don't recommend this card to be in the main deck. I don't personally think it is a must-have in the side, but if you want to test it out, considering your local, considering the event that you're going, I would highly recommend this card. It can be run in the side because it is really great against Kashtira opening hand. The next card I wanted to talk about is Contact C. Contact C reads, when your opponent normal or special summons a monster, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand to your opponent's field in defense position. This card's controller cannot fusion, synchro, exceed, or link summon unless this card is used as material. This card is phenomenal against the Branded Despia matchup because they have to use the Fallen of Albaz and they have to use specific monsters to go into their Mirror Jades or into other plays. So Contact C, in my opinion, would really fuck up that matchup. And considering that Branded Despia is popular as it is, definitely something noteworthy. But against other matchups like Kashtira, I don't think this is going to be too much of a problem. Yes, you would stop them from going into their Exceed plays. However, they could still tribute this monster off and go into their regular summon and then go off from there. You may stall them for a turn, but they'll still also have the Kashtira engine, and Kashtira Finrare before the Kashtira support came out in the most recent set was actually a package getting Splash in many decks. So I don't think that would do really well against that matchup. Also, against Sprite, it really wouldn't stop them too much because if they just normal summon a monster and then special right into the Jet or the Blue, they could just use the monster and go into Sprite Sprint, because Sprite Sprint only needs one level 2 monster to go into it. Because of everything, having good matchups against Branded Despia and not that great versus Kashtira and not that great versus Sprite, the three most strongest decks in the game right now, I don't think this is something really noteworthy. So because it's only good in one matchup, I don't think it's that great. I wouldn't run this card. DD Crow. I don't think DD Crow is a bad card. It is not limited to only monsters since it can banish anything in the grave. Also, it is not limited to once per turn. If you have multiple copies, you could use all those copies in one turn. Considering today's format like Kashtira, it doesn't really care about getting banished anything from the grave, considering that they set up a Rise Heart and then just everything gets banished anyways. Against Branded Despia, if you banish the Aluber or banish the Fallen of Albaz, yes, it may be a little inconvenience and maybe they have to go into a different monster, but it doesn't really stop them. A Sprite, you can maybe get away with it if you banish important cards like the red or the carrot when they tribute it as cost, but I don't think that this is going to be anything game breaking, and because of that, I do not think it's good in the format, so I definitely would not recommend this card. Winged Dragon of Ra Sphere Mode. Sphere Mode is a very scary card, and I have been on the receiving end of it before. Considering that Kashtira is running around ending on 3 monsters, Diablosis, Shangri-Ira, and the Arise Heart, it's definitely something to consider. But also a good Kashtira player would also take that into consideration and more than likely will end up playing. So players nowadays are ending on the 1 Arise Heart and passing. So it gets around cards like Lava Golem, Nibiru, and Sphere Mode. But I think the best place to run this card, if you can sacrifice that normal summon, is being in the main deck. So decks like Sprite, they don't really care about their normal summon and have ways to get monsters onto the board, Runic, stuff like that. Definitely something that you can run this deck card in. And also it's really good against the Branded Despia matchup. BC Lubellion, Mirror Jade, and Masquerade. So tribute all 3, there you go. So definitely something good there. So if it was my choice, I definitely think it can be run in the main. I don't think it's bad in today's format. But you have to also be able to give up some you also have to be able to sacrifice that normal summon in order to play this card, but I do think at least it can be run in the main. It's very experimental, but it can. So the same reasons why Winged Dragon of Ra Sphere Mode could be run in the main, Lava Golem could be run in the main for those exact same reasons, so I'm not going to go into depth on that, but it's less situational. And also you have to be willing to give up that normal summon. So it's great against the Branded because they'll probably end up on the Mirror Jade and end up in the Masquerade or the BC Lubellion. Kashtira, if they don't see it coming, they'll probably end up on the Diablosis, Shangri-Ira, and the Arise Heart, so you can tribute off 2 of those. So I definitely think this card can be run in the main. You just got to be ready to sacrifice that normal summon. So the Bestial cards. Bestial cards last format were a godsend because we needed cards to stop the Tearlament fusions from the graveyard, and this card did exactly what we needed to. Considering that Tearlaments are no longer a thing and they are on Shipwreck Cove, I don't think this card is as strong as it once was. However, it is great against a Branded Despia matchup because it would stop them. But I think the bigger question is, how often are you really going to see Branded Despia at your local and at your regional or major, wherever you're going? I think Branded Despia is a very popular strategy, and I think you're going to see it pretty often, even with my locals having a couple of Branded Despia players. I definitely think it's something that you should take into consideration. I don't think it's something that you have to play in the sideboard. I don't think you have to play this in the main, but I think it's something that you can run in your main, considering your local or considering your event. So it's definitely fallen from grace, and I would potentially run this in the side. Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood. Look, man, I love the art. The art is phenomenal. It's cute as fuck. Look at the little dog and look at the little Ghost Sister. Cute as fuck. But this card is not good in the format. There's only one situation where I think this card would be good, and that is going against time. Going to game 3 and your opponent's popping off and you have this card in your hand, perfect, boom, special summon this and you're gonna win off of time. But other than that, I don't think this card has any other really good use. Again, I'm sure that you can run it, but even then there are better ways to play against time on your opponent. So I would definitely put this in not good in the format. Ghost Belle and Haunted Mansion. Ghost Belle and Haunted Mansion is definitely a very situational card. I don't think it's bad in today's format. I do think that it's okay. It is good against the Branded Despia matchup because they use so much of the grave, special so much from the grave, banish from the grave, right? You discard this and negate that effect. But that's really one of the only matchups where this card does good. In Kashtira does little to nothing, and going against Sprite also does little to nothing because they don't have Elf anymore. So because of those reasons, because Branded Despia is such a huge threat nowadays, I do think that it can be run in the side, but it's something that it's not a must-have. Ghost, Ogre, and Snow Rabbit. I don't think this card is too great in today's format personally, because it has very situational use against the Sprite matchup. It's good against Gigantic, right? Before they detach for cost, you could discard this, pop the card, and they can't resolve the effect. Against Branded Despia, it does nothing, because they don't really care that their monsters are on the field. They don't mind if it's in the graveyard because they can just banish everything and then still resolve their effect. Yes, it does put a hindrance into their plan and may mess up a step, but they could still build a board. Against Kashtira, you may get rid of the target for birth on the field once they activate Fenrir or Unicorn, but a good Kashtira player, you guys know the vibes, right? They're gonna have the follow-up play, and typically they're gonna have the follow-up play with like Theosis or the field spell or something of the sort, and they're just gonna continue on. So again, Ogre can stop like one play or two plays, but that's about it. It's definitely gonna maybe make the opponent work a little bit harder, but it's not gonna bottleneck the line that your opponent's going for. And for those reasons, I don't think that it's good in the format. Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries, man. It is not a bad card. It is very situational, however, but if you're playing a strategy that does not care about their extra deck, this is definitely something that you could run. You could just jam pack your extra deck full of extra deck boss monsters that are popular in the format, and then once you run into those matchups, you could reveal it and then bam. But what happens when you play against another strategy that has the same thing, right? Where they don't really care about their extra deck, like Labyrinth. This card is going to do little to nothing to change the game state or to help you out in any kind of matter. So because it is very situational, and because it's only stopping, and because it's only once per turn, I think it still falls in the same category as not good in the format. Again, it is a good effect, right? Stopping a potential boss monster or stopping a potential line of play that your opponent's going for, if you know the matchup, if you understand the lines of play, which you should if you're going to a big event. This is definitely going to bottleneck your opponent, but what happens when you have other lines? So because of that, I definitely would put this not good in the format. The same reasons as Ghost Ogre is here is the same reasons that Winter Cherries are. Man, I hate talking about this card. This card is so strong. Think about it, guys. In a format where Kashtira is arguably the best deck, and they could end on a single monster that has a Macrocosmo-like effect and just pass, and you have to deal with that, is difficult. Now imagine that for 2 turns. That's what D-Shifter does. And now imagine playing that same card in a strategy that does not care, or their whole strategy is about banishing or doesn't care about banishing, is phenomenal. D-Shifter, even with Flundereeze, is definitely something that you need to consider, right? You need to make sure that you have this card in your sideboard. It is definitely a phenomenal card, and it's for 2 turns, which is the most broken and annoying part. If you're not playing it in the main, if you're not playing it potentially in the main, it at least has to be in the sideboard. So that's where I would put this card. Please have this in your sideboard. Please be ready to floodgate your opponent. I have been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! For quite some time. I've been playing competitive for about, give or take, 2 years, going on to 2.5. And when I first came into playing competitive Yu-Gi-Oh!, Drytrons were acting a fool and doing all kinds of crazy plays. And a great answer to the strategy was Droll and Lockbird. As time progressed, right, Droll wasn't really necessary because Tearlament was just milling everything and they weren't adding shit to their hand, and they were just fusioning from there and setting unbreakable boards. But now that Tearlaments are gone, a new format arises with Kashtira, and they search like crazy as well. And other strategies search like crazy. You got the Sprite strategy, they search maybe 1 or 2 cards. They also, Branded Despia can search crazy with like Patchwork being run in there, and also the Branded Fusion, potentially searching cards with like Gloss, searching cards like with Mercurier, searching cards through Gold Sarcophagus, and Kashtira searches a good amount as well. Droll and Lockbird is a great answer to those strategies and could really disrupt their plays. So I definitely think that this is something that you could potentially run in the main. Again, it's not super effective, but I do think that it's a great way to bottleneck strategies and prevent them from extending. So my recommendation, I would definitely run this in the side. Please have this in the side. It's a great way to stop searching. Effect Veiler has been such a great card over its initial release, right? It came out back when I was a kid, which is such a long time ago. Goddamn, I'm showing my age. But even then, it's been good probably in almost every single format. and arguably okay in tournament because they just get so many things resolving. But in today's format versus Kashtira, it could definitely be a very strong card. If in a simplified game state, right, if your opponent doesn't have any follow-up play, one effect Veiler, one effect negation on their Unicorn or their Fenrir to stop their search is sometimes probably the only thing that you'll need. And because of that, because of how good Effect Veiler is, and because it's not once per turn, yes, it could only be used in your opponent's turn. And I think that still gives it enough fortitude to stand in today's format, given it's not some game-breaking hand trap where it would just stop everything and definitely guarantee the dub. But its effect cannot be ignored. Because of that, I would argue and say it could definitely be in the side deck. Infinite Impermanence. I love Infinite Impermanence. I love the art of the card, and I do think it is its staple even today's format. Being released so many years ago, 2016, 2017, it's been good ever since. All right, you could activate it directly from the hand. You could, on the plus side, you could activate it on your turn and your opponent's turn, which gives a little slight edge above Effect Veiler. And even a bigger edge that it gets over Effect Veiler is because it dodges cards like Triple T. So definitely something to take into consideration. I definitely think that this is a card, a hand trap, you could definitely run in the main. Artifact Lancia. I definitely think this card is a good card. It came into my field of view when I started understanding how to play against Cash or the Kashtira matchup. It's great going for a defensive play, going into game 2 post side. You could side this card in on your opponent's turn. You could activate this card and stop them from banishing. So it's kind of stops Kashtira. Yes, they still have like monster cards like Fenrir, the Splashable engine that is still a very solid engine overall, but it will stop a lot of their plays. However, that's the problem with Lancia. It can only be activated on your opponent's turn. You can't activate it on your turn. However, going into game 3, going first, right, you could use it defensively because you could activate it and then prevent any kind of evenly matching because no one could banish cards. So those are definitely some things to take into consideration, but in and of itself, that's all it's really going to cover. Yes, it may fuck up some other strategies like Dragon Link. Maybe it'd mess up Branded Despia, but in all honesty, you're using Artifact Lancia to go against Kashtira, and because it's only really going to be used in that matchup, I don't think it's really necessary to have in the side, but I do think that it is a little bit better than Chaos Hunter. Not as good as these other two, so it definitely can be in the side, but it is not necessary. Psyframe Gear Gamma. Psyframe Gear Gamma is such a versatile card. In all honesty, the only drawback to playing the card is that you have to fucking play the brick that comes with the package. But being godlike players, Yu-Gi-Oh players have found out a way to be a little bit more versatile because you can special summon the brick from hand, deck, or grave. You could use the brick driver and discard it for any kind of card effect that requires cost, and then your Gamma would still be active. And Gamma is not a once per turn. For some reason, people always forget this fact. But yes, it is not once per turn. If you have multiple in your hand, and it's still revolving around a chain where you still don't control any face-up monsters, you could activate the second one if the first one gets negated with maybe a Gamma of their own. Also, not once per turn, so if it gets negated and it just stays in your hand, like maybe Gravedigger's Trap Hole, you could just activate it again at another point of the combo. Such a phenomenal card, and I definitely think can be run in the main deck. Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. It's in a very unique place in today's format, right? One, Ash Blossom is not really going to do much to Kashtira. It's not going to do much to Sprite because they're just going to continue to extend and extend because they have so many extenders. But Ash Blossom is a very popular card right now, considering how popular Branded Despia is. Ash Blossom is the one card that could stop Branded Fusion in its tracks, and if you manage to stop the Branded Fusion, the Branded Despia player won't really be able to get far, and it's pretty much GG. So because of how popular Despia is that's how popular Ash Blossom is going to be. So at least I would have this card in the side for that matchup. Draw phase. Standby phase. Main phase 1. Attempt to enter battle phase. Attempt to end of battle phase. I'm sorry if I just made you have a heart attack. I swear to God, I'm not trying to resolve evenly match. I'm fucking kidding. I am trying to resolve evenly match. Evenly match, arguably the best card in today's format. Card is fucking busted. Not once per turn. Can be activated in multiple times at the end of your battle phase. There's not a consistent deck that is part of today's top tier decks that put up an Omni Negate on their first board. Evenly Matched will literally disrupt, destroy, and potentially beat your opponent. That's why if you have the space for non-engine cards, you need to run Evenly Matched. That's why that is one of the few cards that belongs must have in the main deck. You need to be able to clear the board because there's just too much to clear these days. Nibiru the Primordial Being, man, this card is phenomenal. It was a great card before Tearlament. It was an okay card in Tearlament up until when they got the negate. I think it was Rukalos, and even in today's format, it's still a phenomenal card. However, good players will play around it. If you play it in the main board, I think it is the best place to play the card, considering that a lot of decks cannot run non-engine cards, and if they do, they run a small, 9, 12 cards. Nibiru, if you have the space, should and can be run in there. If you're playing against a Kashtira player, a good one will try to play around it post side, but going into game one, they're probably not really worried about the Nibiru. So it's a great card to run in the main. So I think it's definitely right there, right behind Infinite Impermanence. So this is my tier list. There are cards that I didn't mention today, and the reason behind that, I don't think those are cards that are very impactful in today's meta that are really going to change much of the game state. I really wanted to only focus on cards that are currently being used in the meta on a consistent level. I think all these cards are used in some way or shape. Not that those other cards aren't. I think these are the most useful ones in my personal opinion. But with that being said, I wanted to get your guys' opinion. How do you guys feel about my tier list? Do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm wrong? I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. It's just opinions. So I wanted to get your guys' opinions. Leave them in the comment section below with your tier list, or maybe bring up some cards that I didn't bring up in today's discussion video. Also, if you have tier lists, I want to see those as well. Let me know, guys. But thank you again for always supporting. Thank you for checking out today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. There are more videos like this coming out. But until next time, I'll check you guys out later. My name is Winster. You guys have a good rest of your day. Peace out.